Hello, beautifuls. Welcome back. Welcome to the Big Fat Talk Show. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today, and she's got a phenomenal story, and that's what the show is about. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Dionne Monsanto. She's American. She's in Kenya right now teaching yoga. She left a successful financial service career to become a full-time yoga teacher, and has taught thousands of yoga dance classes internationally. As a yoga dance teacher, mental health advocate, public speaker, performer, and life coach, she connects people to their joy and assists her clients in remaining true to their mission. Wow, there's so much more to that story, and I'm going to leave it to Dionne to tell you more about herself. Hi, Dionne.
Hi, how are you, Najda?
So glad to have you here. Welcome to the show. And thank you so much for sharing this platform. And, it's all about empowering and inspiring women and youth out there. And I think your story is exactly that. I'm not going to say anything more, and I'm going to leave it to you. So tell us more about yourself, Dionne.
Okay. My name is Dionne. I am 52 years young, and I'm here celebrating with you. While my oldest child is 26, my youngest is 21. And the big part of my story that I think that brought me here is that my daughter is not here with me, because my daughter died almost 8 years ago. And she was an amazing, beautiful, brilliant child. I call her my black butterfly. I even have a butterfly tattoo on my wrist in her honor. But so many people have shame and embarrassment about certain aspects of their life. And it's really important to me to be transparent. Because there's nothing in my life I feel I should be ashamed or embarrassed about. I live my life fully in the open, and my daughter died by suicide. And so a lot of people find it shocking that I'll talk about her, but she was amazing. I loved her. She died at 15 years. And it's hard to imagine she would have been 23 this year, because, her brother and her were just 3 years apart. And but I live my life in her honor. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that all the people that we've lost by natural causes or by suicide still live with us, and they have a life worth talking about. They have things they accomplished, they have things they didn't accomplish, and if I didn't talk about her, that would do more disservice to her and the community.
Exactly, true.
And then there's so many levels to her story that are really challenging, because this was this baby that started walking at 7 months. She started talking. She was reading at 4. She would look at words. As you said, from America, I'm born and raised in New York City. So we would be on the trains. I think some countries call it the tube. So we're underground, and she's looking, and she would look at the signs. Mommy, that says D-O-G. What does that say? Dog. Okay, that says T-R-A-I-N. What does that say, Mommy? Train. And we'd do the whole train ride. We'd be going through this. And then someone would be like, oh my God, how old is she? 3.
Wow.
She knows all her letters? Yes. She can talk like this? Yes, she talks all the time. And so she had this magic around her that she would pull people in. She was really gripping. And then she would cry all the time. And when she started school, she would be so sad by the end of the day. She's in the car with me crying. And then my son would come into the car and he'd go, Mommy, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything to her. She just started crying. Big brother, Mommy, why is she crying? I didn't do anything. And this would go on. And finally, I asked her teachers, is it normal? Does she cry in school? No. I'm like, I don't understand why she comes home every day crying. It's like, well, she's young, she's in school. Maybe it's all the adjustment of being in school now. She's in a big class. She has to keep herself together. I'm like, okay. And I just felt it wasn't right. I spoke to her pediatrician about it. Is this normal? She's a girl, she's on her period. We get that period gets blamed for everything.
Hormones and period.
Hormones and period. It's like, oh, she'll grow out of it. She's a girl. You were a girl. And I'm like, I'm a girl. I don't remember this. And then she'd get older and she'd want to fight, because literally a ritual was crying for 45 minutes a day. That was just her normal. And I didn't see it as being normal. And when I try to have conversations with other people about it, it's like, oh, she's a girl. She'll grow out of it. She's dramatic. Like, okay, she's excelling in school. She's excelling in arts. We got to the point where she had a full scholarship. She did dance. So in New York, most people have heard, we have the Alvin Ailey Dance School. right? Popular Black Americans started a school because they didn't think blacks could do ballet. So they do a summer program. She was the one child that got the scholarship. Everybody does the summer program. One kid gets the scholarship to go to Ailey. She gets the scholarship. Wow. She goes to Ailey. She was published in English. She was published in Spanish. She had written about 17 chapters of a book. She had finished a children's book. She had met with a publisher. And she was really, really, really embarrassed because at 2 points in her life, there were pivotal things that happened. At about 7 or 8, we're not sure, and 11, she was molested. So this is a child that was living, highly functioning, brilliant, high IQ, living with depression and anxiety disorder. Now, I had been told that it's normal when children are as gifted as she is. You know, when we're thinking of the Picassos, the Basquiats, and all these brilliant artists. Brilliant, you know, that there's some downside to extreme brilliance. So I'm like, okay, so she's a girl, she's brilliant, she has a period. So it's like, there was no sympathy. It's like, she'll grow out of it, deal with it, she's smart, blah, blah, blah. So the first time she was molested, we found out about it later. It was bizarre, because her behavior was really off the charts. Okay. And my mother and I were discussing that it seemed like something happened to her. Her behavior is too weird. So then I called, I was separated from her father at that point. So I called my ex-husband and I said to him, I said, you know, Mommy and I were talking about Siwe. Her name is Siwe, and Busi Siwe means blessing. And so we're talking about Siwe and said, seems like something happened. And he goes, we're on the phone. And he goes, well, it did. Okay, what happened, when, and like, how do you know and I don't know? And he points out that I had told him to have a conversation with her.
Okay, this is her father.
This is her father. My ex-husband, actually, we're still legally married at the point, but it's her biological father. And when we both got married, we each had one child. So my older son is not his child. Okay. And he goes, it did. He goes, remember when I told you, to speak to, you know, when you told me to speak to her about people touching her inappropriately. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I asked you if you had that conversation. You said it went well. Yeah. He goes, well, she told me something happened. And I'm like, on the phone with him, staring at the phone like, what? You know, cell phone.
Yeah, like, how am I hearing this now?
Yeah,
on the phone.
Like 2 months later.
Exactly.
And he goes, well, I said, so why didn't you tell me? I said, do you understand that this child thinks that her body's not important now? Because somebody touched her inappropriately. She told her father, we talk all the time, so she thinks I know. And so she gets in trouble about not doing her homework. Yeah. She gets in trouble about not making her bed. But we've sent this little girl a message that somebody touching her body without her permission was okay.
Because you didn't act on it.
Yeah.
Her mother hasn't even spoken to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. So you were separated at this point, and you were co-parenting.
Yes.
And that was going well?
It was going well.
Okay, so this came as a shock to you, like, this is a big thing, and he's breaking it down to you like it's just something that happened.
Just casual.
All right.
On the phone, and I'm looking at him, looking at the phone,
like what's happening?
Like, I don't understand. Like, this can't be happening to me. It's so surreal. So I said, okay, you no longer have permission to see her because your judgment is skewed. Yeah. If you as her father, if your daughter can tell you some man touched her inappropriately and you did nothing about it, there's something wrong with your judgment. Okay. I've got to call the police. And Dad, he's like, you really think we need to do all that? Yeah. And he has another daughter, mind you. Okay. So I'm like, clearly we need to do all of this. Yes. Clearly it's important.
Yes.
So in any event, I call the police. We go through everything. It turns out the same man, because my daughter's description of him was spot on, had molested another little girl. It was in a restaurant. So big picture, we're co-parenting. Every other weekend, she's with him. So it's his weekend. They go visit his father, and they go to this particular diner. So she goes into the diner. And you know how a lot of these places, when you go to the toilet or the washroom, there's one door, and then there's the men's room, and there's the ladies' room.
Yeah, so you have to enter the main door and then walk into the door. Okay.
So because it's open, that's really not a good opportunity. That's a horrible opportunity for a child on their own. So this man came and touched her inappropriately, and she kind of started and ran back out and didn't go to the bathroom, but she never said anything. Okay. And because she never said anything, I just noticed her behavior because I know my children. Yeah. So the person apparently escaped bail and went back to his country. They said he was from Ecuador. And okay, fine. Life goes on. We explained to her again.
You took charge of it.
I took control.
You went to the police.
Absolutely.
She described him.
Yeah.
They found him.
Yeah. Well, they didn't find him.
Okay.
Because
the description was so on point that they knew who she was talking about.
Yes.
Because there was another report on the same guy.
And the whole problem was because we didn't report it right away and we didn't know the time frame, they thought he was back in the country. So they went to investigate. They went to his house. They went to where he used to live, his girlfriend. They went to all the past places.
He took off before your report because there's another report already on him.
Yes. And when he was out on bail, he escaped the country.
He escaped. Oh, okay. But you did the right thing. You did what you needed to do.
So she got to learn your body is important. Exactly. Nobody gets to touch you without your permission.
Exactly.
This was an elementary school child. Yeah. So absolute pedophile, inappropriate. No grown man should be touching a child.
At least she saw that action needs to be taken. This was inappropriate. We did what we needed to do.
Yes.
Great. What happened
And
next?
I made sure her brother was there too.
Yeah.
So he would understand, like, I'm so big with my boys. No means no.
Yeah.
No means no.
Great.
I don't care where you are in this relationship. No means no.
Exactly. Just preach. I mean,
you know.
Preach. Yeah.
Yes. And and I think it's important to make the connection that between the depression and anxiety disorder and then having this trigger early in her life.
Okay.
Fast forward to being 11 years old. Now her period had started. She did have her cycle because her cycle started at 11. The women in my family start early.
Mm-hmm.
And
so before you say that, so this from that time she was molested till she was 11.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing a brilliant girl still going at it.
Mm-hmm.
She was hurt. She has this scar from what happened to her, but she's brilliant.
Yes.
That's the time she did her book. That's the time she had all those amazing achievements.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She played guitar. She played cello. So at 5 she was playing cello and violin.
Wow. Okay.
And then by 8, I think it was 6, 7, or 8 is when she started guitar.
And academically she was excelling.
Always brilliant.
She was just an A student. And she was an artist. She had this amazing abilities, and she was just an achiever.
And always tutoring her friends, but also that person that's like, oh, I come home from school, Mommy, I need the computer. I have an assignment. When is it due? In 3 weeks. Well, your brother has an assignment due in 2 days. I think he needs to use the computer. You know, back then people had there were no laptops. We had one computer in the house. Everyone had to use. So she always had this stress. High achiever, you know, she must do well.
This is a very important part of the story, like we were discussing earlier, to understand that she was an amazing, intelligent human being.
Yeah, and good athletically as well, too.
Athletically, and in her arts, and in her brilliance in her mind, she was brilliant.
And giving.
Because this is a general misconception about a lot of people.
Yes.
So we get to that.
Because, mental illness doesn't discriminate. You can be intelligent. You might not be as intelligent. You might be rich. You might be poor. You can be of every ethnicity in every country. So now at 11, she's molested again. This time is particularly challenging because it was the same man, her father, her biological father, molested her. It was his weekend. And I was at church, and he called me, and he asked me if I knew where she was. I'm like, it's your weekend. She's with you. What are you saying? And she goes, well, you know, she ran out. I said, what do you mean she ran out? This is going to sound crazy. Now, this is December 2007.
Okay.
He says to me, this is going to sound crazy to you, but C-Ray and I talk about a lot of things. And she's been interested in boys, and I just didn't want her first time to be with some knucklehead who didn't care about her. And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with you. I just don't know what's wrong with you. But I've got to get off the phone with you. And I was driving, unfortunately, so I almost crashed the car when he says this. So that I park my car and I go back into my church so I can now speak to the pastors and explain to them. And everybody's shocked. We're all in a private room going, what? And they're like, well, where is she now? I was like, I don't know. So we keep calling her phone. We're calling her phone. We're calling her phone. And so finally, someone picks up the phone and she's at a hospital.
Okay.
So I live in Manhattan, for those of you that know New York City. So I live in Manhattan in Washington Heights. So she ran, we all lived close to each other. So even though we're not here in the grace of having like a homestead or a compound, we lived less than a mile away from each other. So she was running from his house home to my house in December in New York, the day after a blizzard. So this is a Sunday morning. There's a young girl in her pink pajamas and her track shoes, because she ran track as well, running home in the snow with no coat, no hat, no gloves. So a woman stops her. Just some wonderful angel stops her and asks if she's okay, and gets out of her car and puts her fur coat around her. And when Seaway would tell me the story, she was like, I was so upset. I didn't want her to put that fur coat on me because I don't believe in fur. She killed animals for this coat, but I was cold. And such an activist she was. But it was in the dry cleaners, so they called the police. And then so someone came and picked her up, and they took her to the hospital. So I don't know who the woman is. When I went to the cleaners, they had changed owners. And her story, verified in terms of where he was, and they contacted him. He was picked up and arrested the same day. He didn't deny any of it. She was still worried about getting her book bag from his house because she had school tomorrow and her homework was in the book bag. High achiever. But this is where things really get crazy, because Paul was a good father until he wasn't. I didn't always agree with him, but we didn't fight in front of the children. Sometimes things were tense, and we agreed that we were moving forward for the best in our children. He admitted to this. He went to jail for it. His father paid his lawyer's fees. And I stopped speaking to his father because I couldn't understand. I said, fine, you made a choice. You're choosing your child. I'm choosing my child. So I can't really deal with you that you would spend money to pay lawyer's fees when he says he's guilty. I sat my children down. I told my boys, I said, if you're wrong, don't call me. If you have done something and you've been arrested, unfairly, I will go to the end of the earth, for you. But if you're wrong, don't call me. If you know you were wrong. Yeah. And this man said he knew he was wrong. So I started this thing in my head of trying to understand what's going on in that family. And then we talked about the various levels of dysfunction in the family, and how the sister had been molested by the father and repeatedly raped by him for years. And by the time she told her mother said it was too late to do anything about it. And then, oddly enough, all of his aunts didn't speak to his grandfather. Only his uncle and his father spoke to his father. And his grandfather had raped his grandmother, and that's how the youngest child was born. And then when my sister-in-law, they're all wondering, why haven't we seen Seaway? Why haven't we seen Dionne? Like, what's going on? And she tells them, well, Paul's in jail, he molested Seaway. And they're like, oh, no, don't talk about her business.
Okay, so he came from a family that was, like many families, putting a lid on it every time.
So I'm here. There's nothing I'm not willing to talk about.
But that's strong. That's powerful, because you've just described many families out there that put a lid on such stories.
Yes.
But you've also described how such stories, if not spoken about and dealt with, carry to another generation.
Yes.
And a generation after that.
Yes.
So it's a ripple effect.
Yes.
It's poisonous.
Yes.
And it moves on. And that is a result of putting a lid on it.
Yes.
All right.
And so when I talk about having no shame and mental health, and then we delve further into us to hear about a couple of other people in his family that have attempted suicide. And then I start looking in my family, and which aunt and which uncle always had to be taken care of or had a nervous breakdown. I don't know if that's a popular term here, but that was a popular term in America when someone had a mental health breakdown. So they're a nervous breakdown, they're indisposed, they're away for a while. Yeah. But no one talks about what it is.
What it is.
But you have to know if you have type 2 diabetes, if you have high blood sugar, low blood sugar, anemia, cholesterol, cancer, all of these things you're aware of. Nobody knows the mental health history in their family because nobody talks about it. You can't prevent these things from happening if you're not engaging in a conversation.
You're not weak if you have type 2 diabetes.
No.
It's natural. Maybe your father had, maybe it's hereditary.
That's right.
But then you're weak
Yes.
if you have mental health issues. That's the misconception, right?
Oh,
and that's why I'm not going to talk about it, because
right.
people will see, oh my gosh, she's so weak, she's breaking under pressure, or whatever it is. That's the label they settle with.
And you need to get help.
Yeah.
You know, so there's nothing wrong with getting support. So
you break your arm, you go to the doctor. They put a cast on it. So if your mind is broken, your mental health is broken.
Yes.
You need to take it.
There's this wonderful author I was on a panel with, or not panel, but speaking with, Terry Williams. I can't think of the name of her book, but she has this line where she tells people, because it's all about talking to people within the African diaspora, right? Even in America, you know, we're there by unjust cause, but we talk about, you know, being in the African diaspora, you have to get your checkup, and how she says to get your checkup from the neck up.
I love that.